How did you even... How was it that fate brought you and Petrik together? From what I heard, you had a negative first encounter. That's not true. That's not true. It was a long time ago. 12 years ago. As director of the Institute of Criminalistics at the Federal Security Service, I became interested in the work being carried out by scientists in St. Petersburg, among whom Viktor Ivanovich Petrik stood out. I informed my superiors, as is customary, and they said that I should meet him. I arrived, became acquainted with the work of Viktor Ivanovich, and I was amazed at how in them he always looks at the root. At the Radiev Institute, they got the same osmium isotope by isolating it from osmium. But he took the waste from rhenium ore, and in that heap he found osmium-187, then simply extracted it chemically. I just really like that practicality and simplicity. There are standards among scientists. It's the same everywhere. There are engineering standards, there are... Well, you, for example, can't get into a performing arts institute if you don't meet certain standards. They won't just let you in, not even into Shepkin, nowhere. You won't become an actor, and you won't get into Gnesin because you can't play the violin. Whereas Viktor Ivanovich, he entered into the scientific community. Whereas Viktor Ivanovich, he entered into the scientific community because he graduated from a school of psychology. But he has great experience teaching himself, the same experience shared by many accomplished people. No one calls Edison or Faraday scientists. Kirchhoff and Ohm were scientists. They studied only one thing their whole lives, just one narrow thing. And then we got Ohm's law, and after that Kirchhoff's law. But Viktor Ivanovich senses things. He has a certain sense that's difficult to describe scientifically. I agree with many of my colleagues, academicians and others, that there are certain templates like Einstein with his theory of relativity, and Newton with his mass times gravity, and so on. But it's hard to put him in those. He doesn't fit into any template. Today he might be busy with one thing, tomorrow with another, the day after tomorrow with something else, and then that night he'll jump out of bed and work on the fourth thing. And each time I remember all this time. See, it would seem that everyone knows all about anti-SOx phosphors, but it turns out that that's not the case. It's not that simple. It's what today they call quantum clouds. It's nanotechnology, and they just didn't talk about it back then. That's 12 years ago, and there wasn't even such a word as nanotechnology back then. But why do they shine in a different anti-Stokes region? There's Stokes' law, and they're anti-Stokes. And there were certain theoretical fabrications, allegedly. He already felt that internally. He couldn't explain it. He proved to everyone. He proved and measured the quantum output wonderfully. He has enormous strength. I'd say spiritual strength that causes him, when he sees something, to try to take it all the way. His great ideas, like among the great thinkers of old, that one about how each customer will check the authenticity of their medicine or something else like that. He's a great utopist. Not one scientist can let go of the function of control and pass it on. Nowhere in the world. Not in America, not here, not in England, not in China. The function of control remains in possession of the state. Viktor Ivanovich is far removed from those things. He's a scientist. He dreams about how good it would be.
Виктор Иванович, он далек от этих вещей, он ученый. Он мечтает о том, как было бы хорошо.
Tommaso Campanella, how good it would be to live on the island of sun.
Tommaso Campanella, да?
And here he is, building that island of sun.
И вот он строит остров Солнца. Осмий, которые получали...
Osmium, from which they got 187. Well, if on the global market 1 milligram costs $100,000, for example, he got 10 grams for $1,000.
Он получил 10 грамм за $1000. Вот простые решения...
Simple solutions to complex problems.
Вот мы сейчас.
And here we are now. This installation here. On the outside it looks very complex, but in reality it's simple. It's made up of things we have plenty of in our laboratories. And there are plenty in my institute.
Полно. И в моем институте таких полно.
I mean compressors, vacuum devices, silicon. So to get silicon, they grow it. I did that myself, personally.
Его растят, я занимался сам, лично.
At the Institute of Crystallography, I grew the first crystals of silicon at the dawn of the greenhouse age. Whereas Viktor Ivanovich, he did it from gas phase. You don't need such great expenditures of energy. I emphasize that he has vision, and you get silicon. What's more, he can literally correct it. Went and decreased a little, and you get amorphous silicon. And you can spray it, make plates ready-made, for example. If you develop this technology, you can make LSIs, large integrated circuits. If you develop this technology, you can make LSIs, large integrated circuits, a completely different way. Not the way they're made now, because what's in here is tomorrow's technology. When large integrated circuits will be made by spraying microlayers of silicon, it's no longer important of what. It's the very same problem with his... when he saw that graphite has a layered structure and each layer is graphene. One layer of graphite, if you take it and expand it, it's literally made up of these rings, but you can't expand it. It immediately or rolls up into a tube in certain circumstances and you get a nanotube. Or getting graphene structures of complex composition.
Или графеновые структуры получаются сложной композицией, да, и вот тут статью мы писали вместе.
This article here we wrote together. I spent 5 years studying the amazing transformations of these layers. And when the academician Alexandrov,
никогда там Александров академик, ну, я его глубоко уважаю и все прочее.
I deeply respect him and so on, but he took after his students, rather bad ones, not very decent, who started saying that you can't make nanotechnology in a bucket. You can. Nanotechnology can be made in anything. Can you grow a crystal on a plate? You can.
Кристалл можно растить в тарелке? Можно. Это высочайшая технология.
This is extremely high tech, but you can do it on a plate. You can, of course, do it in a huge installation. You can. Can you get plasma in your own home? Every housewife gets it whenever there's a short circuit and a light switch. That's plasma. But the scientists at the Lebedev Physics Institute or the Kurchatov Institute make that plasma artificially, and 10,000 people study it. And rightly so. A housewife doesn't study it, but she gets it. Viktor Ivanovich, here now we're in one of his laboratories. All of these things here appeared before my very eyes. Well, they didn't appear. They were built with the mind and effort of Viktor Ivanovich. And that's literally what we talked about today. Does science have the right not to be controlled by the state? Yes, it does. Everything started with osmium, because our leading institute said that you can get 1 milligram for $100,000. And suddenly they say that Petrik has 10 grams. I interviewed all the nuclear centers, the Siberian, Kurchatov, and I arrived. He didn't have any, of course, and once again I say that he found a way, a very cheap way from clay, from waste. Did you arrive with the commission? We arrived together, and the goal was not to improve it in anything, but we just saw that yes, it's osmium. As I understood it, and Viktor Ivanovich Petrik told me, in your presence he showed you how with his own hands he... Yes, through simple chemical means from industrial waste, where there's a lot of it, he found that waste of ore that had been thrown away or put in asphalt, and from it, through simple chemical means, he got 2 acids and an alkali. 2 cups of acid, alkali, and he got that osmium. Let me once again emphasize that he got this with us present. We saw it, verified it, and solved that problem for the state, because the president at the time, considering it of super high value, closed it up in jars. State security was directly connected with this case, and when we informed our superiors, the state made it illegal to use it as a deposit for bonds, saying that it's valueless. It announced that it has this value, $1 to a kilogram, and that's it. It follows from your words that nevertheless, at that moment, Viktor Ivanovich did something that no one else in our country could do. It's more like no one before then had thought to do it. Just how before Kulibin no one had thought to do that, or before Edison no one had thought to do what he did. The same thing here. Science was built based on a state principle. So you could say that here appeared a man with a non-standard view, at the same time a very capable inventor. Yes, once again I say a talented inventor who doesn't copy because he really... A lot of people feel very negatively towards him, people who are officially considered scientists, although I personally feel very negatively towards them. I personally don't consider myself a distinguished scientist. I'm more of a practitioner, and I've always taken a hand at solving problems. So Viktor Ivanovich stood out among other people? He stood out and all sorts of awful things fell upon him. Take graphite again, which I consider a great invention. I personally participated. There was already a commission, because there was a Nornickel company, and the interests of the state were presented there very well. He proposed a method for extracting platinoids. All over the world, platinoids are extracted through a difference of electrochemical potentials. Platinum, iridium, they all have different electrochemical potentials, and there are tubs with sulfuric acid and a 500-meter tub and 1,000,000 amperes there.
Серная кислота и 500 метров ванна. Там 1,000,000 ампер. Все кипит.
Everything boils, but everything gets done. It gets done correctly, all according to plan.
Он предложил за 3 рубля 18 копеек.
He offered, for 3 rubles and 18 kopecks, as they said in the Soviet Union, without much expenditure of energy, to extract it. A huge commission from Nornickel arrived, and I was sent to that commission. It was already a commission on osmium, a commission on platinoids.
Эту комиссию, это уже было не по осмию, а комиссия была по платиноиду. Ну, создали комиссию по...
They made the commission, they brought sludge from Nornickel, and how much they get, and all the data, and output percentages. In our presence, they loaded it up. I personally, with my own hands, my department head, all in the presence of security services, and that was necessary, because that precious metal is a base for the state's power. And they checked everything. They saw the platinoids, counted everything down to the microgram, weighed it. The commission signed an act, and Nornickel left. It was a wonderful invention. What was the result? What did the investigation find? It was a new way to get platinoids from any sludge, from any waste. Contemporary technology wasn't ready for it. Society wasn't ready. Its time will come. Those tubs are already set up everywhere. They put billions into those tubs, but you can't just abandon it, fire people, and make a laboratory like this, can you? It's not right from the industrialist point of view. It's not by chance that our president said that many industrialists and officials don't want innovation. It complicates their existence. It requires new solutions, new approaches. And what for? Nornickel gets billions of dollars income a day. Does it need it? Does it need it? No, it doesn't. We can go ahead and say, no, it doesn't. We can go ahead and say it doesn't. If it started getting $500 million tomorrow, and then 200 million the day after tomorrow, then 100, then 5, then 10, then it'd react. So essentially there's efficient technology which has been confirmed to be effective, but it's impossible to implement it because no one's interested? Yes, that's how I'd put it. But the technology is very modern. It sharply decreases energy expenditures in others. So you mean silicon, that technology for extracting platinum, and then there's graphene, as I recall, which is another of Viktor Ivanovich's hallmarks. Well, graphene, yes. It's new, and as I said, I spent 5 years on it. We studied it, and there's also... I'd like you to say something about Viktor Ivanovich's role in all this. After all, as I understand it, it was here in this very place, in Psevlusk, in this small town. It was literally in my presence 10 years ago that he first began to get those tubes. French scientists started selling those tubes at 1 microgram for $10,000 to $20,000. Viktor Ivanovich didn't do that. He got them and offered them to everyone for analysis. But science was at a standstill. But what did we have 12 years ago? Science was at a standstill. There was no money, no equipment. No one could do it. Yet we were able to give ourselves the luxury of investigating and utilizing it. Yet we were able to give ourselves the luxury of investigating and utilizing it, fighting with criminals all around. We equipped ourselves with carbon because it's a simple thing. You yourself were in Chechnya. There's no water, but people have to drink. A small tube full of sorbent. Through it you can drink any sort of water. Everything stays in it. Then you throw it away. A plastic tube, and it costs 18 kopecks. So Petrik's inventions are already being used in the state service? They're already in the state service. The technology that Viktor Petrik developed and that I meticulously followed and participated in, it's incorporated into practice and is now in the regular use of special services as an aid in getting clean water in extreme conditions. Or heating, excuse me, a small brick like this. If it burns for a day, you can feed a whole military company with a hot meal for a day. In a desert, in the mountains, where there's no firewood. And this is a little brick. It can be reused. So it turns out that over the last few years, while a whole slew of ill-wishers attacked Petrik on the internet and in newspapers, he was working calmly and making necessary things. I didn't say that they're all ill-wishers. There are normal people who interpret things normally. I liked a certain set of academicians who are genuinely interested. But there's little that they can do because they need to understand the nature of phenomena, but they don't need its application. Whereas Victor Petrik immediately sees where it needs to be applied. So it's all very interesting. There are certain controversial things. Victor Ivanovich sometimes gets carried away, like any scientist. That's normal. What is it that amazes you most about Victor Petrik as a person, as an inventor? Why amazes? Nothing amazes me. He's a talented person. Nothing amazes me in a talented person. He's just talented. I'm amazed at how little his efforts have been incorporated, at how poorly they're supported and helped along, although you represent the state service. That's correct. Have you ever seen someone suddenly take something and incorporate it? Give me an example. Now I'm asking you a question. I, for example, have never seen that. Society needed to mature for electricity, for the Illich light bulb. Remember the Zoshenkas, when they screwed in the light bulb and everyone saw in what poverty and squalor they were living? They unscrewed it. They put the kerosene lamp back on the table and started drinking moonshine and singing songs. So try screwing in the light bulb. Society will respond with an appropriate reaction. Any society but ours. But all of Victor Ivanovich's inventions, including these powders here, he's trying to incorporate very easy-to-use things in medicine and maybe some things that are truly necessary and healthy. That's correct. Medicine, as a certain philosopher once said, medicine is a caboose from the days of the First World War, hitched to the bright lights of the train of pharmaceutics. Any competition in the field of pharmaceutics is punished with billions of dollars all over the world. So yes, let's make some tablets. Let's make some tablets. He doesn't want to make anything. He wants to defend. Wonderful. We tried it ourselves. They decontaminate. For wounds in extreme situations, we use the powder and it really works. Wounds heal well. It kills bacteria. But try doing that on the pharmaceutical level. For small tasks, it's incorporated quickly, but it needs time to mature. It needs to come up to Victor Ivanovich and say, we are all completely unable to solve this task. I have a question, and it's quite a sensitive one. We all know Victor Ivanovich's biography and how complicated it is, and people speculate on how that has to do with how he was actually in prison for a time. To what extent do you feel it's possible to consider Victor Ivanovich a person who carried out crimes? Or was he at that moment a victim of the system that was taking shape? I, for one, consider that at present he's become a victim of circumstances that took form around a certain group of people with connections to the government. He broke out of that, not quite at the right time. He spat on that whole having to bow thing. And that's it. It's simple, like any non-ordinary person. Here everyone immediately was sent somewhere, everyone. That's one of the flaws of the totalitarian system we had back then. At the time he was a non-ordinary person, and he faced either going west or going to jail, or first to one, then to the other. But he's a patriot, and he stayed here. I think that a person of his level would be offered the chance to leave many times. Oh, many times. As far as I can recall, about 10. And his son, too. So what situation does Victor Ivanovich find himself in relative to other countries?
Сейчас очень нормально, да?
Right now, everything's fine. Any foreign power would like to invite him over so that he could work there and bring wealth to them and not to Russia. Any. I mean the States, Kuwait, I mean Japan, the Czech Republic, Slovakia, France.
Франции, это все. Где он не бывает, ему сразу предлагают, вот тебе лаборатория, вот давай работай на нас.
Wherever he goes, people immediately offer him, here, have a laboratory. How about you work for us? That's a correct position for a country to have. And he could have left to Switzerland long ago and would be working in Zurich, and they would have given him a villa on Lake Geneva, but he's a patriot. So he lives here in Vsevolozhsk, and works here and works for Russia, and that's why our superiors have a biased look at him. I think that's proper because he's a patriot, and he raised his son to be one, and raised everyone else. There were 10 offers for sure, as far as I remember, to leave and advance science in other countries.
Уехать и воспроизводить науку других стран.
So it's clear from that his competitiveness on the world arena is very high.
Очень серьезно.
It's very high, and that's proper. It's just that you could also say that Viktor Ivanovich is a very enthusiastic person, and like any inventor, he's a bit of a child. If the president of the US were to tell him, "You're a genius, come to the US," he'd ask me and other superiors. He'd say he'd go, but what of it? Any country takes any talented people with pleasure. It doesn't have its own. But he doesn't abandon Russia. He works here, and that's very good. I'm very fortunate to have met him. He and I argue, bicker, and on so many different theoretical and technical issues, as you can see, but there's no way around it. He can send a whole storm of indignation my way for having my own opinion. But there's nothing wrong with that. He eventually calms down, and so on and so on. Could you give a general description of Viktor Ivanovich for those TV viewers who don't know him? He's a talented inventor, Edison. I compare him to Edison all the time, and it's appropriate. Appropriate because he's an inventor. He's a person who has wished for his whole life to do good for people, by any means available to him. And the means most available to him are his mind and his hands. Take this water here. I'll put it down. It's possible, yes. It's rot. It smells like oxygen if you take a whiff of the cleanliness of the smell. Go on, compare. It has a blue shade to it. Viktor Ivanovich. It has a blue shade. My co-workers in Chechnya were saved by his HRCM. There's no water there. You need to use a mountain stream and people are killed there. And the local water is like this here. Poison. That's poison. And if you remember what I did then, yes, you took a large amount. My co-workers and director, everyone in my hut drank real water from this water here, and we drank that kind of water. So secretive. I didn't know that you'd taken it there. I say immediately 200 kilograms. And you shipped it right back. That went there. The president and director were supposed to arrive there. They'd arrive and see what my co-workers were drinking. And that they... No. That's the future.